Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by Planters, State Farm, Crown Royal, and the 2020 Breeders' Cup World Championships.
Good morning and welcome to Week 7. This is Fantasy Football Live. I'm Liz Loza, and joining me in our virtual studio is Andy Behrens from Chicago, Matt Harmon from Los Angeles, Tank Williams from San Francisco, and betting analyst Minty Betts from Las Vegas. We are now 6, almost 7 weeks into the regular season, and we have seen some breakout performances by players who are emerging for fantasy managers, but who's been your biggest bust? Andy, what about you?
I thought I could go a week without even thinking about Mark Ingram, but you asked. It's got to be him. I've got him in so many leagues. Took him in the 5th round, 6th round, right? Thought he could reprise his role from last season when he was great. 5 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns, and he's been good. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry, but no more than 11 carries in any week. He's too good to actually drop, but he's not good enough to ever play.
I feel that one. Matt, what about you? Who's been a thorn in your side?
Yeah, as much as it's not fun to see Austin Eckler staring back at me at pretty much every IR spot that I have this year, I don't really think you can, call like a player a bust just because they got hurt. But Michael Gallup, man, every bench spot I've got, he's sitting there and it's like, do I play him this week? Do I not? I'm almost like kind of thankful that Andy Dalton is in our lives messing everything up, because at least it makes the process easier to stomach.
And it is all about the process. Tank, who's giving you a headache?
Man, I have one team where I drafted Zach Ertz, Miles Sanders, Christian McCaffrey. So I think I just need to remove the S, add an extra T, and that describes that team, because it's not a bust. Just the whole team is butt.
Always brilliantly stated from Tank. I think for me, like Matt alluded to, and Tank did as well, a lot of people have had injuries to deal with, and they've left some pretty big holes in many of my lineups. Austin Eckler, certainly one of those. But as for actual busts, Juju Smith-Schuster is hands down my biggest whiff so far this season. He's just like not seeing enough targets beyond 10 yards to be productive, and his production has decreased every single week since this season began. I mean, I think that he'll probably go over 6 yards today, right? But it's hard to trust him as anything more than a low-end wide receiver 3 at this point. So those are some of our mea culpas. Minty, you're keeping tabs on all things betting for us this morning. So are you seeing any trends at the sports book?
So we're seeing a lot of bets, most of the bets actually being on the Packers-Texans game with the Packers minus 3.5, but no line movement. And also a lot of money on the Panthers to upset the Saints here, not only against the spread, but yeah, to upset them straight up. So we'll see what happens.
People like a revenge narrative for sure. Don't forget, we're here to help you get those lineups set. So send your roster questions on Twitter at Yahoo Fantasy using the AskFFL hashtag, or drop a question in the chat and we'll try to answer as many as we can on the show. Plus, our own Scott Pianowski is responding to questions live on Twitter as we speak. So go ahead and fire away. Let's get to the injury report. Some highly rostered players that we know are out today include Saints receivers Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. Thomas could also miss next week, according to reports, so keep an eye on that. Bills wideout John Brown is also out, as well as Bengals running back Joe Mixon. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of Gio Bernard questions today. And a look at the latest from the actives and inactives this morning. Julio Jones was limited in practice this week with that nagging hamstring injury. He is good to go today, however, and we'll try to follow up his 2-touchdown performance from last week. Jamison Crowder, who was injured in practice this week, was downgraded to doubtful and will miss the Jets matchup with the Bills today because Jets. Packers running back Aaron Jones is dealing with a calf injury. He did travel with the team and was considered a game-time decision, but it looks like he will not go today. I also think we'll have a lot of questions about that backfield in this episode. And finally, DeAndre Hopkins, who was on the injury report with an ankle issue, is expected to play tonight per Adam Schefter.
All right, first over-under is going to be a player coming off of a monster week, and he's got a terrific matchup. Christian Kirk, Arizona Cardinals wide receiver, 12.9 standard fantasy points, half PPR, I should say. And I am going to take the over on this one. Love Kirk this week. I know that the workloads haven't necessarily been there, right? He's only averaging about 5 targets per week. But this matchup is spectacular against Seattle. Seattle, by a mile, allowing the most receiving yards to the wide receiver position. They are also giving up 370 passing yards per week, an exceedingly generous defense. Kirk is going to need to be targeted early and often in this one. I think he gets to this total easily. 1 touchdown, maybe 90 or 100 yards. Tank, what say you?
Man, I got to go with the over, too. Like, you remember that one time in Mexico when you just kind of lying in bed and you wake up and you look to your left and it's like that person that you see, like, you don't know him anymore. Like, that was Kirk. Like, Kirk blew up last week, and we're like, hold up, who is this dude that's just been throwing up zeros in our lineup, you know, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season? But now, my dude is finally healthy. My man is finally looking for him, and I think that he's in the game script that's going to allow him to exploit that matchup against the Seahawks on the outside. And so when you're moving DeAndre Hopkins all around in the slot and everything else, Kirk's going to get busy on the outside, so I definitely think he goes over today with that number.
Minty, can we make it a sweep?
Unfortunately not. I get why you guys like the over, but I'm on the under here. I know it's hard to believe since he had a day against Dallas last week, and he's going up against a very non-existent Seahawks defense. But the Seahawks are coming off a bye. I think they step it up here. I think Christian Kirk gets maybe a touchdown, a couple receptions here and there, but no significant yardage. So that's why I'm taking the under.
Oh, I hate it when someone has to be the voice of reason. Okay, we'll try to get you a sweep later in the show.
Let's turn our attention to some surprisingly great picks presented by State Farm. Just like State Farm has surprisingly great rates, these players have the potential to shock the fantasy world with a game-changing performance and are under 25% started this week. I'm going to get us rolling here with a big LOL at the fact that AJ Green has fallen to the point that he qualifies for this segment. Guys under 25% started in Yahoo leagues right now, and I get it. It was a rough go at the start of the season for AJ Green, but did bounce back, showed a little bit of life last week with a over 90-yard performance, despite the fact that T. Higgins is fully integrated into the starting lineup. Green ran a route on 85% of Joe Burrow's dropbacks last week. He has 6 end zone targets on the year. That is a mark that's shared by just 10 other players. He's getting those quality targets downfield and in the end zone, and he showed us last week that he's still able to convert on those. So going against a Cleveland secondary that has been pretty miserable all year due to injuries, due to guys performing under expectation, I think Green can be a fine wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 play in a game that I think is going to be very exciting overall. Liz, I love your pick here at Cortland Sutton Jr. Tell me all about this guy here that you're firing up this week.
Oh, well, you know I love an underdog, and Tim Patrick has been exactly that, undrafted out of Utah. He's 6'4", 208 pounds, and he is leading the Broncos in targets right now. For 3 straight weeks, he has either cleared 100 yards or found the end zone. Last week, week 6, he did both, 101 plus a touchdown against New England, that defense, and in whose coverage? Oh, Stephon Gilmore. It is time that we give him some respect. As I said, he's the leading receiver now in terms of targets. Now, obviously, Noah Fant returning this week muddles it a little bit, but when you've got a matchup against the Chiefs, expecting that Drew Lock will be chasing points, I think you have to give the advantage to Tim Patrick, who also, just a fun fact, caught his first pro touchdown against the Chiefs back in 2018.
I love that. Love the Tim Patrick call. He's getting those great deep targets, and he's converting on those. Now, my last pick here is a guy who is getting some of those deep looks, but might not always be converting them. I mean, there is nothing more painful than watching Aaron Rodgers try to get Marquez Valdez-Scantling going down the field, and it just usually doesn't happen. Yeah, he might not be that good of a player, but come on, right now he's top 15 in the NFL in air yards. He's getting those chances, like I mentioned, and he is one of the very few discount passing pieces in this matchup between the Packers and the Texans that could easily be the shootout of the week. I want all these players in daily fantasy. If you do need a desperation throw here at wide receiver, I think you can turn to MVS. I love when I can give an analysis on a player that I might not think is very good, but I do think can have a good week in fantasy. So keep an eye on those players, and remember, when you want the real deal like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
All right, it's time. It's time to get to those roster questions. Don't forget to use the hashtag AskFFL. Our first tweet comes from Dev, and Dev needs help. Ooh, this is a tight end question. Jonnu Smith, playing Pittsburgh, obviously. Robert Tonyan, if we're talking about the shootout of the week, a Green Bay Packer, though he was a little bit banged up, has an ankle issue, and Noah Fant, as I mentioned, returning for Denver. Matt, you talked about Green Bay right now, so are you going to prioritize Tonyan ahead of Smith, who was also coming off of a little bit of an injury, and Fant, who was doing the same?
What I'm going to prioritize is scolding Dev here for being a clear tight end hoarder in his league. How you have 3 quality options at that position? I can barely string together one. I'm actually going to go with Jonnu Smith in this spot, though, because I really like the matchup of the Tennessee Titans passing over the middle of the field with Devin Bush for his ACL. He's on IR. He was the clear coverage leader for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the linebacker position. I think Smith can get some chances against Vince Williams, a guy who allows an over 98 passer rating in coverage this year. I like Smith there as the upside play and probably the volume play in this particular matchup.
It's a very good point. Let's get to the second tweet. It's from Matthew, and he asks, in a half point PPR league, he needs one Antonio Gibson, Gio Bernard. That's our first Gio Bernard question, you guys. Let's keep track. Or DeAndre Swift versus Atlanta. Andy, which of these pass-catching backs do you like?
Yeah, obviously I don't mind Gio Bernard. He's going to get a ton of work in this one, but I'm going to go DeAndre Swift here. He is a great start this week. We've heard some reports that he's going to start to surge, take over a little bit in that backfield. It happened last week, right? Multiple touchdowns, 100-plus yards in that game, and he's been the primary receiving threat for the Lions out of the backfield, and Atlanta is so generous to opposing running backs in the passing game, so I think Swift has a big one here.
It's nice to know that some things in 2020 are the same, like being able to play a pass-catching back against the Atlanta Falcons. Third tweet here, it's from BJ. He wants to know, should he start Mike Evans at Las Vegas, Tyler Boyd, or CEH, keeping in mind, Tank, obviously, that this is Le'Veon Bell's debut as a Kansas City Chief?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect Le'Veon to play that much this week, so that really doesn't bother me. It's just a tough matchup for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if I have to pick someone, I'll likely go with Mike Evans. I mean, you know, Tom Brady has been hot to start the season. The Raiders like to run the ball, but at the same time, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are pretty tough against the run, so the Raiders may have to air it out a little bit more than what they would like. So if you get into a potential shootout, then you have to look at Brady doing the same thing on the opposite side, which would lend itself to Mike Evans. And obviously, he loves to target Mike Evans in the end zone. So as far as trying to figure out who may have the most touchdown upside, I think that may be Mike Evans as well.
I think that makes a lot of sense. We have one last tweet. It's from Richard, and he needs either Robbie Anderson or Hollywood Brown. Well, Hollywood Brown's on a bye, so your answer is has been made for you, and it is Robbie Anderson. So we are going to take our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, Gronk or Jimmy Graham in Week 7, Matt and Tank will debate. Stick around. Welcome back to Fantasy Football Live. Just because we are all virtual here on FFL doesn't mean we can't celebrate game day. Crown Royal is with us all season long, giving our at-home tailgate the royal treatment with team cocktails inspired by one of the biggest fantasy matchups of the week. The Texans are hoping to rebound after that tough overtime loss to Tennessee this week. And Crown Royal bartender Krista Havakin from Houston is sending positive vibes with this Texans-inspired cocktail.
Hello, my name is Krista Havakin and I'm a bartender from Houston, Texas. And today we're going to make a Crown Royal vanilla cocktail called I Do Declare Janice McNair, perfect for Houston Texans game day. First, we're going to start off with 1.5 ounces of Crown Royal vanilla. Next, we'll take 1 ounce of fresh squeezed lemon juice. Next, 3/4 ounce of orange liqueur. Then simply add 2 dashes of lavender bitters. Fill your shaker tin full of ice and then shake. Next, to prepare our glass, we're going to rim it with a lavender, lemon, vanilla sugar. You will take 1/2 cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of lavender, 1 tablespoon of dried lemon peel, and 1 vanilla bean split into 2. After that, just simply pour it in the glass. And there you have it, an I Do Declare Janice McNair with Crown Royal Vanilla, perfect accompaniment for your game day grilling. Enjoy.
For more recipe inspiration to crown your game day at home, visit crownroyal.com/recipes.
All right, time for our first fantasy face-off of the week. Hank and I are going to go head-to-head here on a couple players that are ranked pretty close to each other here. We're going to start off at the tight end position. And hey, Tank, what year is it that we're debating between these two guys? Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham. Why don't you hit me first with what your thoughts are on Dusty old boy up there in Chicago?
Well, I remember when they used to call my man Jameson Graham, Jimmy Graham, when he had that guy with the squirrel nest throwing the ball to him down there in New Orleans. But my man Jimmy Graham is doing all right, bro. Like, Nick Foles seems to like the guy. He has 18 targets over the past 3 games, and that's all we really want out of tight ends this year because tight ends have been cheap, so he has a good opportunity. Good matchup. He should be doing okay.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but look, Gronk is back. We're able to kind of talk about Rob Gronkowski as an actual fantasy option here. I mean, sort of. Look, he had one nice game, okay? And I mean, maybe the like CBD retirement thing is finally wore off. He's ready to play football here in the year 2020. He ran a route on 21 of 27 Tom Brady dropbacks last week. If he's going to be a fully involved player with O.J. Howard out the mix, I think he's at least a good bet for a touchdown against the Raiders this week. Now, let's move on. Let's get these guys out of here, okay? Tight ends, enough at the tight ends, and also enough of guys that were good like 5 years ago. Let's move into the players that we're really interested in here, the wide receivers. We've got a couple of vertical threats here. I'm going to get us started with Brandon Cooks in this one. Look, there is no way I'm going to tell you to shy away from this Packers-Texans matchup. The Texans have allowed over 900 total yards the last 2 weeks alone. That defense is the worst, but at the same time, Deshaun Watson is absolutely cooking. Brandon Cooks over 200 yards combined the last 2 games, and he leads the team in routes run. Look, if you've got a Packers or a Texans player, you probably want to find a way to get them into your lineup this week. But Tank, hit me with Mike Williams here, another player that I actually really like this week too.
Well, first off, he's my cousin. Secondly, he came back and dunked on the Saints 5 for 109 and 2 tugs before they went on their bye last week. Third, he's my cousin. And now he's going against that Jacksonville defense that gives up the 12th most points to fantasy wide receivers. And lastly, dude is my cousin, and they going to ball out against the Jags. They already talking about benching Minshew. You already know it's going to get ugly today.
What do you think is going to happen more? He's going to catch more 10-plus, 15-plus yard passes, or you're going to make cousin drops? I love it. This is perfect. Both of these guys are good plays. If you got to make
all
sure
of
to
the
find a way
above.
to get them into your lineup.
All right, make your pick time. We are taking your social questions. It's me, it's Liz. Let's go. Let's see what is popping out there right now. RSV is going to get us started. Looking at us on Twitter here. Here's a whole bunch of names. McKinnon, Montgomery, Henderson, and Boyd need a running back and a flex in a standard league. Thanks. Thank you, RSV. Liz, what say you?
So I think when we are talking about a standard league, I'm going to look at volume, and David Montgomery is a clear starter here. And then I think, you know what, we saw Tyler Boyd find the end zone last time he played the Browns. I like that as an option. I'm a little bit worried about how much Hasty is going to work in with Jerick McKinnon, and the Bears defense, I don't really like the matchup for Henderson. So I think I'm going to go Montgomery and Boyd.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one, especially on Montgomery. I think he's a clear play here, and you're right to be worried about Jerick McKinnon's role after what we saw from Hasty last week. Okay, our next question coming to us from Greg. Greg needs, let's see, it's a standard league. Need to start 3 from this list of 5. It's Kenyon Drake, DeAndre Swift, talked about him earlier, Todd Gurley, Justin Jackson, and Mike Davis. 2 running back spots and 1 flex. I'm going to go Gurley here for sure. It's a gift of a matchup against Detroit. I'm going to go Justin Jackson. Again, a gift of a matchup against a Jacksonville defense that can't stop anything. And then for me, it's a choice, but I'm throwing out the Kenyon Drake game against Dallas because that was Dallas. It's a choice between DeAndre Swift and Mike Davis. If it's a standard league, I think I'm going to go with what is apparently a guaranteed touchdown week in, week out from Mike Davis while he is the cornerstone back for the Carolina Panthers. How do you feel about that?
You know what? I don't think I agree. I think I would start Kenyon Drake in favor of Justin Jackson. I know how much you appreciate Jackson. We're going to talk about him a little bit later in the show, but I don't like a player with consistent durability issues who's been banged up throughout the week, especially when there is a rookie who has succeeded near the goal line right behind him.
Oh man, I thought Davis would be the questionable one there. Okay, let's move on to another question here. We've got this one from Melissa. Melissa needs a wide receiver and flex from Christian Kirk, James White, Keelan Cole, or AJ Green. It's full PPR. Again, wide receiver and a flex. How you feeling about Christian Kirk? Like him?
I like Christian Kirk a lot. I love the ceiling that we're seeing from Christian Kirk. Tank and Matt already talked about him earlier, or maybe it was you. I don't know. We've been talking about him all week. Obviously, in this format, you like James White as well, right? He's 7-8 catches a week. We know we can get that from him. As much as Matt talked up AJ Green, I think I'm going to go with James White and Christian Kirk in this one.
Yeah, fully agree. You've got a floor with James White that we like, and you've got a ceiling with Christian Kirk that's almost unlimited this week in a spectacular matchup against Seattle. Okay, final question here is coming from Brian, I believe. And Brian is asking, need some help for my 2 flex spots in a half PPR. CeeDee Lamb, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, Tim Patrick, or Christian Kirk. We need 2 flex spots here. Thank you, Brian. This, for me, is going to be Tim Patrick, a guy that you talked about earlier. It's an up-and-down matchup with Kansas City here. Patrick has been just money in the bank over the last 3 games. You said it. It's either 100 yards or a touchdown or both. And then I'm going Christian Kirk. Spectacular matchup against Seattle. It's not just that Seattle has given up a zillion passing yards per game. They're all to wide receivers. Incredibly exploitable matchup. I like Kirk here. You agree with that?
Yes, it's so lovely to be back in lockstep with you. I was holding my breath to make sure we could both answer the same players and in the same way, 100%.
All right, thanks, guys. Keep the questions coming. Use the hashtag AskFFL for preferred service.
All right, every Sunday night for you lunatics that are up late after the game, I file my weekly recap column where I tell you about the 5 things I care about and the 5 things I don't care about coming off the Sunday action, so make sure you go read that. But leading into this week, let's talk about something that I absolutely do not care about. And look, let me read you off the little nerd stats here about the Rams offense, how good they are. They're 9th in yards per drive, 5th in offensive DVOA, 5th in total yards, 10th in yards per play. And yet I don't really find myself caring about any of that when it comes to projecting their players in fantasy, because right now they're all struggling to really hit a ceiling. I mean, the tight ends, forget about it. Tyler Higbee ranks in that nebulous, ultimately totally meaningless tight end to 7 to 14 range, all because he scored some touchdowns a few weeks ago. Well, that's not happening anymore. Not even clearing 60 yards at any point here in 2020. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, these guys that were highly touted coming into the year. Woods ranks wide receiver 14, and Kupp is all the way down at wide receiver 24. The former, being Woods, is buoyed by a league high among wide receivers, 76 rushing yards. Cooper Kupp is really struggling to make big plays consistently in the passing game and see a ton of volume now that he's not really playing slot receiver as much anymore. Those two guys really they play these highly constricted roles, so they need to make plays after the catch. And to be fair, they are making those plays. These two guys, among wide receivers who have 30-plus targets on the year, are the only ones that are averaging more than 7 yards after the catch per reception. I mean, they're making money on those screen passes. However, the volume is just not there. Woods has not seen more than 80 yards since week 1. As I mentioned, Cooper Kupp struggling to consistently make plays. You've got to think of these guys as floor plays only in fantasy, considering the Rams offense right now, they've got the training wheels on Goff, like I've mentioned several times, and they're one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL. So yes, while a running back perhaps could consistently hit a ceiling in this offense, I think you already know the story there, why that is not going to happen.
Let's head over to the sportsbook to make some money with a few player props we like from BetMGM.com. Andy, kick us off.
Yeah, I'm going to look at Baker Mayfield here. The number on his passing yards this week, 236.5, and that is not where Baker Mayfield lives this season. In 4 of 6 games, he's actually under 200 passing yards. When everything is on schedule and on script for Cleveland, he's probably throwing the ball like 25 times. That is just the nature of the offense. They run to win. That is how they beat Cincinnati earlier this season, so maybe you like the possibility of a back-and-forth matchup against the Bengals. Earlier this year, it was 219 and 2 touchdowns for Mayfield. Like, I think he's playable in fantasy, but I would be very surprised if he goes north of this number.
Minty, what about you?
My player prop is going to be Latavius Murray, running back for the New Orleans Saints, over 39.5 rushing yards. I mean, he's averaging a little over 43 rushing yards per game, and the Panthers allowing about 5 yards per carry. Their passing defense is one of the best, so I can see Drew Brees handing the ball off, and he can't hand it off to Alvin Kamara the whole time. So the over is my bet here for Latavius Murray.
Certainly should be a lot of production for that backfield this week. I want to talk about one of the most ascendant young receivers in the league. It's Terry McLaurin. I think he's going over 78.5 receiving yards. Last week with Kyle Allen under center for 4 full quarters, he converted 7 of 12 for 74, and that was with James Bradbury as his primary coverage. We have seen him beat #1 cornerbacks week after week. And what? He's got Dallas this week. This is a prime matchup. The Cowboys are a squad that's allowing an average of over 180 yards to opposing receivers week after week. I actually have him fearlessly forecasted just over 100 yards. So yes, give me the over on this prop. If you feel like taking a chance on any of these player props, sign up today at betmgm.com/Yahoo. New users will receive a 100% match up to $1,000 when you make your first deposit. Must be over 21 and in New Jersey, Colorado, Indiana, or West Virginia. Terms apply. Time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. Coming up, Antonio Brown is back in the NFL. We'll discuss what that means for fantasy managers. Be right back. We are back here on season 15 of FFL. Some news late this week that Antonio Brown is returning to the NFL and reuniting with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. He could see the field as early as week 9, according to Adam Schefter. What do you guys make of this moving forward? Matt, I am particularly interested in your thoughts on this one. Let's also begin with saying, I'm curious to since you're the receivers guy, where do we expect Antonio Brown to line up? We know the last time we saw him, he spent about 30% of his snaps in the slot. What does this mean for Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and where do you see him fitting in?
Yeah, it's so ironic that the Bucs end up signing him after Bruce Arians, basically said in the offseason, no way, not going to happen. He's, a locker room problem. We don't really need that disruption. Well, football always overturns all of those type of things, when you're talking about off the field issues or whatever. And the Bucs at this point, they have a ton of injuries in the skill position room. This was supposed to be a strength of the team, but Chris Godwin's had injuries this year. Mike Evans has played through injuries this year. O.J. Howard, we know, was supposed to be a big part of their passing game. He's on IR, so I actually think there's a pretty good amount of room for Antonio Brown to walk in. I expect him to play the Z position as an outside receiver, be that flanker, while Mike Evans stays at X, and I think Chris Godwin will move between the Z and 2 wide receiver sets and play inside. We know Bruce Arians loves him in that position. I actually think there's a decent amount of volume for Antonio Brown to step into because, we've seen Tom Brady try to make it work with Scotty Miller, and it's just not there. I think Brown will obviously be a theoretical upgrade on those targets. But look, I can remember sitting here a year and a half ago and talking about, wow, he's going to go crazy with the Patriots or he's going to go crazy with the Raiders or all this stuff. We'll see. We'll see if Antonio Brown can actually make it onto game day and can string a couple of games together. If he can stay out of his own way or if his own problems off the field will continue to haunt him. I think this is just the ultimate, we'll see what happens play. And I'm not going to be the guy who's going to tell you, a strong take one way or another on.
Well, I think one thing is for sure, and that is what Tom Brady wants, Tom Brady gets. And interestingly, moments after this news drop, less than an hour, Antonio Brown had been added to 70% of Yahoo leagues. So he was, on Friday, rostered in over 70% of Yahoo leagues. So people are excited for it. I have a feeling, though, Matt is right. We're going to talk about Antonio Brown a lot. So let's talk about a player we may not discuss as much. Tank. Which of these 2 backups, Gio Bernard or Jamal Williams, are you preferring, and why is it Jamal Williams?
Right, because one, he's my cousin. That's for you, Matt. But secondly, he has the best matchup of the day. One thing that I did that I could probably kick myself for, when I saw that Aaron Jones may miss this game and I have him in one of my lineups, I dropped AB because, it's tight rosters. I dropped AB to go get Jamal Williams just for this game. And I know Matt touched on a lot of points about why, how AB would be used. But at the same time, I would have preferred AB if Jameis was still there. Actually, Mike Evans, Godwin, and all those guys, whether it's been injuries or not, they haven't lived up their potential with Brady in the lineup. And when you have Jamal Williams going against that Houston Texans defense that every running back has roasted today, and you know that Aaron Jones is going to be out in the way that they've used him, even with Aaron Jones in the game, this is the ultimate blow-up spot for Jamal.
You just took us for a ride, and I think I was on it the whole time. Thank you, Tank. All right, there's still lots of flex decisions to discuss and help out fantasy managers. So let's get to our fantasy win, place, or show segment presented by the 2020 Breeders' Cup. With the World Championships coming up on November 6th, we're going to use racing terminology to rank flex plays this week. So Andy will be betting win, place, or show based on what fantasy managers can expect in week 7. Andy, take it away.
Yeah, let's start with a clear win. Lock it up, take it to the window, and that's going to be Ronald Jones this week against the Vegas Raiders. Ronald Jones, in his last 3 games, he's over 100 yards in each of them. He's been spectacular. He's averaging almost 5 yards per carry right now on the season. He's on pace for over 40 receptions. So he is doing it for you in any sort of fantasy format. He's been terrific. And this week, it's the Raiders. They allow the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. It is a perfect spot for Jones. He's been absolutely dominant lately. He's a clear win. Now, place, this is a solid RB2 for me. I'm going to go with DeAndre Swift. We've talked about him a little bit so far on the show. It's a great spot for him. First of all, over 100 yards last week. 14 carries, couple of touchdowns. That is the sort of role that we can expect from Swift moving forward. Only a couple weeks from now, we're going to be thinking about this guy as perhaps an RB1, RB2 on a weekly basis. He is also the primary receiving threat out of the Lions' backfield. And why does that matter this week? Because it's Atlanta. Atlanta has allowed the second most receptions and the second most receiving yards to opposing running backs. It's just a great spot for Swift. No matter how this game trends, no matter which way game flow takes us, he's going to be great. And then Show this week, an RB3, somebody that you can definitely slot into a flex position. It's going to be J.D. McKissic. He's still available in a ton of Yahoo leagues as well. If you need a desperation heave in Week 7, I think McKissic can be the guy. He's actually played over 50% of the snaps in each of his last 4 games. He's running alongside Antonio Gibson, but McKissic is playing a ton. He has 19 receptions over his last 3 games. So in any sort of PPR format, he has been absolute fantasy gold lately, and again, widely available. You can go grab him. So to review, our winner, no question about it, gonna cash, that's Ronald Jones. Place, that's DeAndre Swift. He's gonna be great today. And Show, J.D. McKissic, another strong start. Again, a huge receiving workload for him. Don't forget to place your bets for the Breeders' Cup World Championships on November 6th and 7th, where the world's top thoroughbreds will battle it out for $31 million over 14 races, only on NBC Sport.
All right, let's jump into our next over-under of the program here. And we just talked about Antonio Brown joining this Bucs offense. Well, let's talk about the quarterback of that offense going into this week against the Raiders. We're going to set the line here at 299.5 passing yards for Tom Brady. Now, I'm going to get us started, and I'm going to go right away to the under, because Andy just talked about Ronald Jones. He's the engine of this Buccaneers offense. Okay, maybe not, but he does have 330 rushing yards over his last 3 games. That puts him in company with Derrick Henry as one of the few guys who has 3 100-plus yard rushing games on the season. Jones has been cooking, and I don't really think they're going to need to go away from him in this spot against the Raiders defense that running backs consistently whip up on. So I just don't see much passing upside for Brady in this one, given the way we've seen the Bucs play this year. Minty, how about you? Are you riding with me on this one?
I totally agree. Now, the Raiders are allowing the 3rd most passing yards per completion from their opponents. As we saw last week, Tom Brady is utilizing his running backs a little more and taking it easy on his wideouts. 300 passing yards is a lot, and he's only exceeded that once this season. So I am taking the under, just like you, Matt.
We love to see it. Hank, can we get a super negative sweep on one of the best players to ever play the game?
Come on, ride the train and ride it. Yeah, I'm going under 2, man. I mean, this is easy. I mean, y'all already hit all my talking points. Like, he's only gone over that number once this year. The Raiders' run defense has been poor, and I think that this is a Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette monster breakout game in the making. And at the same time, the Oakland Raiders, they play at a pretty slow pace when you look at the other offenses in the league. So I think when you combine all those factors and the fact that the Raiders also like to run the ball, even if they're going against a tough matchup, the odds are that Brady's going to go under this number.
You heard it. Tank said it's easy. We all talked about the running backs. So lock in 40 rushing yards for Ronald Jones and 400 passing yards for Brady. That's pretty much how these normally go.
All right, let's turn our attention to our picks who will be off their game this week. These are players who are more than 50% started in Yahoo leagues, but could be a bust in Week 7. Andy, who are you fading?
Yeah, I got to fade Josh Jacobs, and he's been great for fantasy managers all season, right? He's got 5 touchdowns. He's averaging 97 scrimmage yards per week, but this is not a good spot for him against the Tampa Bay Bucs. That's the league's #1 run defense. They only give up 3 yards per carry on the season, barely anything on the ground. No running back has even 60 rushing yards against them this season. Very tough spot for Jacobs. And oh yeah, his offensive line has been quarantined all week. Not a normal practice week for them. So just a really difficult spot for Jacobs. You can hope that he finds the end zone, but that's about it. It's not going to be a big yardage day.
All right, Tank, talk to me about your potential bust.
I'm going with David Montgomery, and just isn't a weekly thing. Like, this dude been off his game damn near the whole season. And this is one of those things where he has a decent matchup, but at the same time, the Rams are coming off a tough loss against San Francisco. They're playing at home, and they're likely going to be pissed off and playing inspired ball. And the way I look at it is that insanity is doing something over and over again, expecting a different result. Like, this dude had a solid matchup against Carolina. I understand that they took the touchdown away from him, but he still threw up pedestrian numbers. So not am I only your favorite fantasy analyst, but I'm also your psychologist and your friend. So please do yourself a favor and don't let this dude drive you crazy this week.
Oh, I would love some therapy with Tank. I'm going to close it out with another running back. I want to talk about James Robinson. Now, with Chris Thompson on the COVID list, it's very likely that he could save his fantasy day with a receiving score like he did last week. But from a rushing perspective, we can't help but be underwhelmed by his last two efforts, 29 yards, rushing yards versus Detroit last week. It was a second effort under 50 rushing yards in a row. And the matchup against the Chargers, who are getting back to health and have yet to allow a rushing touchdown to a running back, is absolutely tough. So I'm just going to downgrade him a little bit. Now, let's toss it over to Minty for her best bets for Week 7.
Welcome to Mad Bets, everyone. These are my favorite bets for Week 7. Let's start with the Chargers and the Jags. The Chargers are a 7.5-point home favorite here, and they're 3-1-1 against the spread this season, but they were underdogs in all those situations. This line is based off the Jaguars losing their last 4 straight by 8 or more points, and I do not agree with this line. I'm taking the Jaguars plus 7.5 here. Next up, let's move on to Sunday Night Football as the Cardinals host the Seahawks. The Seahawks are laying 3.5 on the road here. Look, the Cardinals are 4-1 against the spread, their last 5 against the Seahawks, and they're a much improved team. However, the Seahawks are coming off a bye. They're the kings of the backdoor cover, and I have yet to bet against Russell Wilson. I will not start today, so give me the Seahawks laying 3.5 points in Arizona. Next up, let's wrap it up with some Monday Night Football as the LA Rams host the Chicago Bears. The Rams are laying 6 points at home here, but I kind of like the Bears catching 6 points on the road. Now, I think their pass rush and their stop unit can do enough to slow down the Rams, and I expect this to be a really close game since they have been winning close games. So give me the Chicago Bears, at plus 6 points. That wraps it up for my best bets for Week 7. Guys, check out more episodes of Mad Bets on Twitter at Yahoo Sportsbook.
All right, Hank, let's talk to some of our beautiful weirdos, our good friends in the chat room. Remember, hit me with the good emojis in your questions right now. Flood that chat room. But I'm going to start this one off today with Keith, who says, Bonjour from France, with a couple of the flags. We've got a wine glass, an Eiffel Tower, along with the football. We love you, international fans. We love you indeed. All right, flex league, or a flex question here in a standard league, Hank. Joshua Kelly of the LA Chargers or Deontay Johnson coming back off an injury. Which one of these guys you like better this week?
I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly. I mean, I understand that Justin Jackson's getting most of the volume in LA, but it's pretty evenly split. It's probably about 60-40 or so. At the same time, it's hard to pick which Steeler guy is going to go off. Is it going to be Deontay Johnson? Is it going to be Claypool, Juju, Ebron? Is it going to be the running backs running the ball? And I mean, so I think it's hard to determine who to narrow down in as far as touchdown equity for the Steelers. I'll go with the easier play with Kelly just because you have to choose between him and Jackson.
Yeah, especially since it's a standard league, if they're going to get around the goal line in this one. And especially, I think the Chargers, I know their record's not great, but I think they're a good team. I think they can get the lead on Jacksonville in this one and really give it to the grinder back in Josh Kelly. I think that's the way you go, even though I don't mind Johnson coming off the injury now fully healthy. Let's move on to Peter James Paul Cornwell. We love a 4-name addition here, and they send in an ambulance emoji with the siren. Very appropriate because he wants to know, now with Aaron Jones out of the mix, does he go with Jamal Williams or DeAndre Swift, or he could drop Mike Evans and play both? That's aggressive. I think for me, I'd probably play Williams over Swift. I like the matchup for DeAndre Swift. I like the fact that he's starting to get more work, but at the same time, you mentioned it, Williams is going against that Texans defense. The matchup is just too appealing there.
Yeah, I mean, I love Williams' last name, first and foremost. But then on top of that, we understand that they're going to try to give DeAndre Swift a little bit more usage in the offense. But at the same time, Adrian Peterson is there. And I'm a little bit scared of that. I don't know if it's going to happen all at once, especially when you're dealing with Matt Patricia. So I'd rather just bank all my eggs on Jamal Williams in that lovely matchup against the Texans.
I totally dig it. All right. We're moving on to our last question here. And you know I love a good thematic one. We're closing in on Halloween. We've got a football emoji. We've got a pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern emoji. And I talked about it earlier with Robert Woods being basically just a floor play right now. My guy Ryan Sparks wants to know, in a full PPR, is it too aggressive to play Tim Patrick, who Liz hyped up at the top of the show, read a bunch of great stats off about Tim Patrick. Is it too aggressive to play Tim Patrick over Robert Woods? Tank, am I crazy, or do I think that's kind of a good idea? Tim Patrick right now, he has an over 16-yard average depth of target. He's getting those vertical looks from Drew Lock, who's throwing it down the field more often than any other quarterback right now. And the Rams offense going against the Bears defense while they're already not hitting a ceiling. Am I crazy for thinking that Tim Patrick is the play here?
I mean, you've already said it all. If you look at the potential game script with the Rams and the Bears and then flip it to Denver and Kansas City, I mean, Drew Lock was able to air it out a little bit against the New England Patriots. So, I mean, I think he should be able to have some success against that Kansas City Chiefs defense. And what we've seen over the past couple of weeks is that Tim Patrick is that guy. And so when I look at it from that standpoint, I think Tim Patrick is an easy decision over Robert Woods.
I love it. Love it when Tank and I are in lockstep. For all you people that love to talk to chat room, make sure to come back later. Liz and I will be doing our halftime show during the early game portion of the halftime. We'll make sure to give you all your attention that you need in the chat room. Now, time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. But when we come back, Tank, you see him right here. This guy is running away with the Guru Challenge, so drinks on him in 2025 when we can all get together again. But more importantly for you people, he's going to give you his daily fantasy values. That's coming up next.
All right, final over-under. It's going to be David Montgomery, a player that Tank called pedestrian not so long ago. So we'll see. That shook my confidence a little bit. The number in this one is 84.5 total yards, and I'm going over. 3 running backs have done this already this season against the Rams, and Raheem Mostert would have been the 4th before the injury. So Montgomery himself has done this a couple of times already this year, and he's getting a little bit of a receiving workload now that Tariq Cohen is injured, not gonna be active the rest of the season. So that's 14 catches over the last 3 games for Montgomery. That gives him a path to this total. I know he hasn't exactly been the most efficient runner out there, but I love his chances for 20 touches in this one. So give me the over. Liz, is that too aggressive?
Oh yeah. It's wildly aggressive. This last week, I sat in the player props and segment and said that David Montgomery at Carolina would go over 59.5 rushing yards. He hit 58. I also, in this exact segment, said that maybe we should all take our red rifles and pocket them, be a little bit reasonable about Andy Dalton going over 300 receiving yards. I will continue to be the voice of reason, I don't know how, in 2020, and remind everyone that, yes, Andy is right to mention that with Tariq Cohen lost for the year, David Montgomery has been adding more receiving work to his overall resume, and the Rams are giving up the 6th most receiving yards to opposing running backs. However, I don't think it's enough to make up for Montgomery's 3.7 yards per carry under.
Yeah, okay, it's an issue. Matt, break this tie.
Yeah, I'm going to go over on this one, but it's over with like a, I don't like it either. Montgomery's not good. Like, we can forget about that. That's not even the issue here. I get that he's not a good player, but the volume is going up. 17 touches per game since Tariq Cohen went down, and like I said, that number is rising every single week, even if the production isn't coming along with it. I think in this matchup against the Rams, who, by the way, allow one of the lowest success rates on early down rushing plays, they invite you to run on them so that Aaron Donald can come hunt you on 3rd down. They'll be like, yeah, sure, let's give up some plays to David Montgomery. Who cares? It's not going to help the Rams win the game, or the Bears win the game. So in this one, yeah, I'm going to go over, but like I said, it's over with a ugh.
Oh, perfect. That's Fantasy Football Live, hyping up players who aren't good for the last 15 years.
Oh, it's me. Hey, what it do, baby? It's your favorite ball on the budget, T-Money, with my Week 7 DFS value plays. Now, coming in at quarterback, I have Kyle Allen coming in with $22 against the Dallas Cowboys, what I like to call the Ricky Bobby Bowl. Kyle Allen, Andy Dalton, 2 quarterbacks, 2 first names. Now, now, this is the deal. Now, the Dallas Cowboys defense gives up the 5th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. Now, this game could be an ugly, low-scoring affair like the Thursday Night Football game where we saw with the Giants and the Eagles with the NFC East, or this can be an ugly shootout. I'm going for the ugly shootout with Kyle Allen today, so make sure you plug him into your lineup. A lot of value there at $22. Now, at running back, I'm going with Justin Jackson at $16. Now, the Jaguars defense gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. This dude has gotten more touches in the run game and targets in the pass game compared to Joshua Kelly. So even though he's not going to get all the volume, say like one of your top lead backs, the matchup is just too good to pass up for $16. Now, at wide receiver, I'm going with my man, Scary Terry McLaurin, with $22 going against those same Dallas Cowboys. Now, my man Terry McLaurin has the 5th most targets out of fantasy wide receivers this year. The Dallas Cowboys give up the 2nd most points to fantasy wide receivers. Now, if my dude can't get it done against the Dallas Cowboys, like, when is he going to get it done? And if he can't get it done against the Dallas Cowboys, then when can Kyle Allen get it done? Things that make you go, Now, at tight end, I'm going with Jared Cook versus the Carolina Panthers at $16, and we already know what's going on. My man Mike Thomas is out. Emmanuel Sanders is on the Rona list. So who else is Drew Brees going to throw the ball to? Now, we understand that Alvin Kamara is going to probably get a lot of catches out the backfield, split them out in the slot, and basically use them as an additional wide receiver. Yet at the same time, the Carolina defense is really bad against the run, and what is that set up for? Play action pass. And if you want to go play action pass, who's that set up for perfectly? The tight end. So even though our tight ends this year in fantasy have been sweaty cheeks, I like to target guys who are cheap and who have the opportunity to get at least 1 or 2 tubs in the red zone. And when you look at this matchup and all the guys that the Saints have out, Jared Cook looks like he could be that guy. Now remember, the T is for the money, and the money is something that your tail will not have in your wallet if you do not get my fantasy players in your lineup. So please put them in responsibly. And producer Diane, please go to that beautiful DFS footage.
No, don't.
Oh, there it is.
No,
it's so pretty.
No.
I'm not going to say
we were going to drop the 6
speak
lowest
amongst
scores?
yourselves.
I feel that we said we were going to drop the 6 lowest scores.
Y'all
right?
don't have anything to say. Like, I'm going to be quiet. Y'all don't have anything to say about this?
I think we've hit this static on this screen long enough. We don't need an ISO here anymore. So there's still time to get in on the action in the new Yahoo Cup BetMGM Daily contest. Enter every week for a chance at $75,000 in total prizes, and the top 25 lineups each week will be entered in the Yahoo Cup BetMGM Final, where you could win free rooms from MGM Resorts or a $20,000 Vegas getaway. Head to yahoo.com/dailyfantasy to join.
We are ecstatic to welcome Troy King to the show this week. You can find Troy's work at Ball Blast Football. You can catch him on the Fantasy Football Confidential podcast. You should also be following him on Twitter at @TKingMode. Troy, thanks for joining us. Did I get everything in? Is there anything I left out there?
Nah, you got everything. Want to appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. Well, you happen to be joining us in an absolutely perfect week for someone who is a diehard Miami sports fan. You've got the Dolphins jersey on right now. Like, I know you're a Miami guy. The Tua era is starting, and it's starting at a time when the Dolphins were really good under Ryan Fitzpatrick. 3-3, actually the only team in their division that has a positive point differential, I believe. So, like, things were really looking up under Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's have a quarterback change. How are you feeling about the Tua experience? You nervous?
I am extremely nervous, but I feel so conflicted because I've been waiting for this moment my whole life as a Dolphins fan. When we drafted Tua, it was one of the most exciting times of my entire life. We finally have like a real quarterback. But one thing that people don't take into consideration in terms of the Dolphins' change was that their bye week is supposed to be like in week 11. So the whole goal was to have Tua start after the bye week. But the problem is with the coronavirus, it was pushed up. So even though the bye week changed, they still put him out there. I'm excited to see him, but I am a little bit nervous.
Yeah, so Joe Burrow's looking really good. Justin Herbert is looking crazy good. So there's a high bar for Tua to clear. I think he can clear it. He was a brilliant collegiate player. What are your expectations for him rest of season? And then how do you feel like this is going to impact some of the fantasy assets that we've been depending on, like Devontae Parker, like Myles Gaskin, like Mike Gesicki?
I believe that he's going to go off to a slow start, if I'm being honest. I don't think it's going to be just a seamless transition from Fitz to Tua. I see him leaning on one guy. So whether it's Gesicki or Parker, I believe it's most likely going to be one of those two in terms of finding his safety blanket. And I don't believe that Myles Gaskin's role is going to change much. He's already being used at a very high percentage. But I'm curious to see how the weapons, how they adjust to Tua. But I believe he's probably going to pick one guy and maybe he'll be fantasy relevant. But I don't think we're going to have multiple fantasy relevant receiving options.
Okay, now we can talk just some standard fantasy stuff. One of the things that I like that you guys just did at Fantasy Football Confidential, you did like a 3-week look ahead, like players that you like for the upcoming. Because first of all, in 2020, it seems absolutely ridiculous to look beyond, say, 2 or 3 weeks. And I think that pairs well with a discussion of, like, who are some trade targets right now? Who do you think can really thrive, say, over the next 3 or 4 weeks that might be, like, just who are some buy lows or some buy highs?
Sure. I would say DJ Moore. Going into the season, I think people didn't factor in enough that it's a new quarterback, new coach, new OC. Last week, DJ Moore got 11 targets. Like, he's still very involved in the offense. So I believe and I think his managers are lower on him. So I think that he's a great target to get, as well as Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown's been extremely disappointing, but he hasn't had a game under 6 targets. For the rest of the season, he doesn't have that hard of a matchup in terms of defense against wide receivers. And his value is super low right now. So I think you could definitely get him for cheap. So those are my 2 main guys I'm trying to target.
And then give me one player that you think is a pretty clear sell high right now.
Mike Davis. I mean, it has to be Mike Davis. Once CMC comes back, maybe he'll have a little bit of role, but obviously he's not going to give you this RB1 production when CMC's back. So,
yeah, it's a good call as well. I just want to thank you again for joining us. It's been a total pleasure to talk to you. Again, you can follow Troy on Twitter at @TKingMode.
Let's check back in on Twitter for some more viewer questions at the hashtag AskFFL. Here we go. And this first question is from Alec. Ooh, yay, a Juju Smith-Schuster question and a Michael Gallup question. Oh, Lord, and Cole Beasley. All right, so which Are we flexing of these two? Andy, because you called the Cole Beasley touchdown last week, you get the pleasure of answering this question.
There is no pleasure involved in this question. This is a tough one. I'm still gonna lean Juju here. Like, I like that we have both the Pittsburgh and the Dallas receiving cores to consider, because I think of them as fairly similar right now. There's three guys that are solid, viable fantasy plays each week tied to each receiving core, and maybe only two of them are going to blow up in any given week. I'm going to take Juju here. I think it's been kind of a spin the wheel situation. I think it falls back on Juju this week. I know he's disappointed you recently, but volume is still going to be there. I like him as a play against Tennessee.
You like him as a play, or you will tolerate him as a play?
I will tolerate him. All of these guys are just tolerate.
Okay. Just to be clear. All right, Minty, this next one is for you, and it is from Glenn. And Glenn asks, do you think the Chiefs giving 8.5 cover the spread?
Well, this line moved significantly. I believe Chiefs opening up at -9.5, now down to 7. That means a lot of money, a lot of tickets on the Denver Broncos here today. I personally think the Chiefs can cover and win by a touchdown. The only thing that's keeping me from betting this game is knowing that the Chiefs might get gassed towards the end, because we know that the stadium here in Denver is very hard to play due to the altitude. So yeah, I think the Chiefs can cover, but I'm not personally betting that.
Okay, next question is from Bill, and he asks, he needs a flex in a standard scoring league, Justin Jackson, T. Higgins, or Brandon Cooks. Matt, I am going with T. Higgins. Do you agree?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks in this. I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks in this one, especially in a standard league. I expect there to be a ton of points scored between the Texans and the Packers, like I mentioned. Look, if you've got Texans guys, you probably want to find a way to get them in your lineup. And if you're playing in daily fantasy, they're still pretty good values. And just whoever's on the other side of the field, play them too. I mean, it's just like Houston is set up so perfectly to be like the Bucs of last year, where all of their guys can usually go off. And whoever's playing against them could be going off too, because his defense is so bad. It's a great game environment there with Houston and Green Bay this week. I'm going to probably side on getting those players in Houston into my lineup, no matter who the other options are, even though Higgins and Jackson are both fine plays.
Still giving the edge to AJ Green. Should have seen it coming, but a very cogent argument, of course. Final tweet is from Gabe. Pick your favorite Tyler this week, Lockett or Boyd in the flex. Thanks for the help. Andy, which Tyler do you prefer?
Oh, we should all have Gabe's problems. I'm gonna go Tyler Lockett. It's a shootout of a game. I want anybody who's tied to Russell Wilson in that offense right now. Lockett, I got nothing bad to say about Boyd, right? There's no disrespect there. I think he's a pretty solid candidate for like 7-8 catches, 80 yards, maybe a touchdown. Tyler Lockett's ceiling with Russell Wilson is like 3 touchdowns and 180 yards, right? Like he's the play here.
All right, Matt. What do you have going on in the chat? Anything new?
Oh, there's some wonderful questions in the chat room. This one I think is particularly interesting. Tom from YouTube, shout out to our YouTube viewers, with a very thematic jack-o'-lantern ghost football compilation here, and one clown on the end. I hope that's not pointed at your boy here, but in a full PPR needs one flex. Giovanni Bernard, Jerick McKinnon, or Deebo Samuel. This is a tough question here, because I love Gio this week, but Deebo is like all the way back. You know, he's playing a ton now. We saw him just pile up yards after the catch this week. Has like something like negative 38 air yards. I think I'm gonna go with Gio Bernard in this spot though. Andy, again, you're a voice of reason type guy. Do you disagree with me on this one?
No, I don't disagree on that. Gio Bernard is clear. Like, I feel like I haven't recommended him enough on this show because he always gets thrown in with some stellar plays. But Gio Bernard is sort of locked in for probably 20 touches this week.
Locked in for 20 touches and has that great mustache. How can you go wrong with that? We can take a couple more here. Victor from Facebook sends an SOS emoji. Yikes, tough scene. Gio or Justin Jackson? On that one, I again am going to go with Giovanni Bernard in that debate, so I think we can keep it moving there. How about this? This is an interesting question from Young T. Tash. What a name. On Twitter, shout out to our Twitter viewers. Cam Newton or Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback? You know, Teddy, you called it a revenge game earlier, Liz. Teddy called it a respect game against his former team in the New Orleans Saints. I actually think I would go with Teddy Bridgewater in this debate. We know this offense is functioning at a very high level right now. The Saints defense on the other side of the field, a ton of disappointing players in the secondary. I think this could actually be a very fun, fantasy-friendly environment. Liz, do you disagree with me in taking Teddy over Cam Newton?
No, I like the matchup, especially when we saw what San Francisco did to Jared Goff and company last week. I just don't like it as much had Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Thomas been in the lineup, because then I think there'd be more, as Scott Pianowski likes to call it, carnival appeal. But I think that Bridgewater has been solid, and there is lots of connective tissue between these two teams. Joe Brady obviously in there as well. I'm interested to see how much respect Teddy Bridgewater puts on those Saints.
Yeah, I think there can be a decent amount. We love how incestuous that NFC South is when it comes to coach and player transactions.
All right, it's time to take a break here on Fantasy Football Live, but don't forget, Yahoo was rated the best fantasy sports app by the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association in 2019. Check out this week's top fantasy pickups and award-winning insight on the Yahoo Fantasy app today. When Fantasy Football Live returns, I face off with Andy and try to make a case for not one, but two players from the Washington football team. Am I really doing that? I'm doing that, I guess. All right, let's go. We are back here on Fantasy Football Live. 7 games getting ready to kick off here at the top of the hour. Let's check in on our own feeds and see what folks want to know. Andy, who is sliding into your DMs?
Yeah, I've actually seen a handful of questions here. Got one from Grant, got one from Elliot, both on the weather in the KC Denver game. First of all, I'm not your weather guy. I have no meteorological background whatsoever. I can't give you a lot of weather information. We know that there's going to be some snow in Denver today. Snow in and of itself, not really a huge worry. For me, unless there's some sort of weather event where like schools would be closed and we have to check on our neighbors and that sort of thing, I'm not going to get too panicky for fantasy purposes. What we don't apparently have in Denver this week are high winds, and high winds are the real worry. That's where you start to think about benching quarterbacks. But what are you going to do? You're going to bench Patrick Mahomes? No, of course you're not. You're going to start all your Chiefs in this one. If you want to worry about the kickers, that's fine, but I'm not terribly concerned about weather.
All right, and then let's see, Tank. Who's asking you what?
Yeah, so I had my man Scott on Twitter ask me, who should I start out of, Jamal Williams, Josh Jacobs, or Devin Singletary? And I know usually we like to go with the matchups, say like Singletary has an amazing matchup against the New York Jets defense, but at the same time, I always like the arrow on volume. So we already talked enough about Jamal Williams. You definitely lock him in. But I'd rather go with Josh Jacobs against that tough Tampa Bay run defense versus like trying to pick who's going to get the touchdown for Buffalo. Is it going to be Moss? Is it going to be Singletary? Is it going to be Josh Allen running him in? Or is he going to throw it to the wide receivers? So I think in that instance, even though you see a really good matchup, you lean to the volume and understand that even though it's tough, Josh Jacobs will probably still outscore Devin Singletary each and every week.
All right, Minty, what sort of trends are you seeing or questions are you getting?
Well, on Instagram, Kyle asks, how do we feel about the Bills minus 10.5? They're slumping, but the Jets flat out stink. Thanks, Minty. I totally agree. You know what? I actually bet on the Bills myself, minus 10. I hate laying double-digit favorites, but the Jets, betting against them has been very profitable, and I will continue to bet against the Jets. So, yes, Jets minus 10, 10.5 would be great.
All right, I got a question on Instagram from Jose Pena, and it's a running back question. There's a couple of players here. He needs to start two of the following: Mike Davis, Devin Singletary, Gio Bernard, Jamal Williams, and Justin Jackson. My goodness, how did he win this waiver wire? I don't even, this is a buffet of fantastic options given the current one. So, you know, I think the floor play, I'm going to say, even though it's not a high ceiling play, is Mike Davis because he scores every week, and there is extra volatility when we're talking about Gio Bernard, when we're talking about Justin Jackson. I like Devin Singletary's matchup against the Jets, but I think I'm going to pair this floor play of Mike Davis with a higher ceiling play of Jamal Williams and go with those two running backs, but certainly some good options here. All right, so you can keep those tweets and Instagram DMs coming in. Our own Scott Pianowski is on Twitter, still answering questions using the hashtag AskFFL. So go ahead and ask away all the way up until kickoff, because that is how long Scott's answering.
All right, time for our second set of fantasy face-offs. It's me, it's Liz. You know the rules here. Two similarly ranked players. We each debate them for about 20 seconds or so, and wow, we have a couple of gems at quarterback. If it's come to this, I don't know, maybe look ahead to week 8. I'm going to argue for Baker Mayfield, but Liz, you like Kyle Allen in this one.
Does that mean you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm not going to try to convince anybody that Kyle Allen is a world beater. You can go and make bad decisions along with Allen and review last year's tape to find out for yourself that he is indeed not. But he is the starter in a familiar system and has an exploitable matchup last week, despite a deficit and coming back from an interception, which is part of the Kyle Allen experience. He managed 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was a top 12 effort. I like the matchup against Dallas. I think it is serviceable. He's got McLaurin, so I'm going to give him the edge over Mayfield, who is being begged not to throw the ball.
Yeah, no question the matchup favors Kyle Allen here. And I can understand it as like sort of a YOLO play. You think you're a huge underdog and maybe you just want to strike gold and perhaps he gives you multiple touchdowns. But he's also Kyle Allen. We know there's going to be ugly sacks. We know there's going to be ugly turnovers. I'm just going to go ahead and take the bankable 2 touchdowns, 200 yards that I know I'm going to get from Baker Mayfield. It's almost never more than that. I know I'm not going to get a blow-up week from him, but I do think he can provide at least that much. Okay, now we're going to look at a couple of running backs, and I'll get us started with this one. We're talking Justin Jackson, and we are talking Antonio Gibson. You're back to the football team. The case for Justin Jackson is fairly simple. He's going to play this week. He outsnapped, outtouched, outgained Josh Kelly in the Monday Nighter a couple of weeks ago, so he is the RB1 for the Chargers, and that spot is going to be gold this week against Jacksonville. Jacksonville is dreadful against the pass. They're dreadful against the run. It's a blow-up spot for him. I think Jackson has a really good shot at 100 yards and a touchdown.
I don't hate it at all. Here is my issue. Week 5, I talked about Justin Jackson in fantasy damage, and he is absolutely one of the most efficient players when he's healthy, except he hasn't been healthy this week. Yes, he practiced in full on Friday, but with a injury history like his, I'm a little bit nervous about aggravation. And now when we talk about Antonio Gibson, anyone who's a Gibson believer has felt like J.D. McKissick has been like a gnat, just kind of flying around unnecessarily, but Gibson continues to get the red zone work. So, and when I look at the matchup, right? Dallas has given up 7 rushing touchdowns to opposing running backs. I'm still believing in the touchdown potential of Antonio Gibson.
Nobody believes in the football team like Liz Loza.
What a ringing endorsement.
All right, let's jump into Make Your Pick here once again with the man himself, Tank Williams, the DFS master. Well, enough of this DFS stuff. Let's talk some traditional fantasy football here, some flex debate questions from the people on social media. Tweet number 1 comes in from Bob, and he needs 2 in a 10-team, we're really doing basic fantasy here. A PPR league between Jerick McKinnon, Antonio Gibson, DJ Chark, and Gio Bernard. This is an interesting one. I agree with Liz that I think Antonio Gibson's a pretty good option this week, and obviously I feel like we've talked up Gio Bernard in that stash so many times this week. Hank, I think those are the 2 plays here. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the 2 safe plays. Antonio Gibson has a really good matchup against the Cowboys, and we know Gio is going to get all the carries with Joe Mixon being out. That Chargers defense is tough. Like, me hoping for a potential shootout and Minshew doing something in LA wants me to kind of choose Chark a little bit, but I can't do it. Gio and Gibson.
I hear you. Minshew's on the ropes, too. They're talking about maybe potentially benching him this week because, we definitely need to get a look at Mike Glennon for sure here in 2020. Wonder what that's all about. Yeah, please, give me a break. Let's move on to our next tweet here. Chase asked, he also needs 2. Between Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Robbie Anderson, Tyler Lockett, Juju Smith-Schuster, or we could play 3 of these cats if we want to play them over Ronald Jones. Let me tell you right off the bat, no, you're probably not going to bench Ronald Jones in this spot. So, Tank,
right.
Of these 5 illustrious wide receivers here, give me 2 that you think is the best option.
Oh, man, I'm going with the matchups and the guys who've been getting a lot of volume. I like Robbie Anderson and I like Tyler Lockett. I mean, we look at Seattle going against Arizona. I mean, that has shootout written all over it. And then Robbie Anderson has been one of the most productive wide receivers in fantasy. He's going against that Saints defense that's been honey roasted on the regular by wide receivers. And he's that number 1 guy for Teddy Bridgewater revenge game. So those are my guys.
We are in lockstep on that one, Tank. I would definitely go with Lockett. You can't put that ceiling on your bench. And Robbie Anderson, too. I think Marshawn Lattimore has given up like a perfect passer rating and coverage. So I agree with you. Those are the 2 options. Let's move on to our final tweet here from Trevlin, I think. That's how you're going to say that one. Needs 2 in a must-win week. He's got to win this week, Tank. It's a must-win because sometimes it's okay to lose, I guess. Deebo Samuel, Jerick McKinnon, Gio Bernard, or your cousin, Jamal Williams. I feel like we've gotten so many Jamal Williams questions and we've gotten 0 A.J. Dillon questions. So let's just be clear. A.J. Dillon's obviously going to smash this week in my challenge lineup, but that's beside the point. In this specific debate, I would go Jamal Williams and Gio Bernard, your waiver wire heroes for the running back position this week. Tank, do you agree with me, or are you putting either of these 49ers in ahead of your cousin or Mr. Mustache here?
I'm not. I'm going Jamal Williams all day, every day, especially on Sunday. And we've already talked about Gio and that like, how can you leave Gio and that mustache out? We don't want to deal with the Shanahanigans with all his running back play. I like Deebo coming back, but we want to go with the guaranteed floor with the running back. So Gio and that mustache for sure. And my cousin.
We love it. We love it when Tank can get one of his cousins in the lineup, and we can love it when an NFL player out of nowhere suddenly has a big old mustache on the headshot. Good luck, guys.
All right, let's switch gears and talk last-minute sleepers who could do some fantasy damage. This week, I'm starting with the running back, and it was supposed to be Jamal Williams. Matt just teased it. We've been talking about Jamal Williams all episode long. We don't need to discuss him. Let's talk about A.J. Dillon. I'm calling an audible here. A.J. Dillon comps to who? Derrick Henry, who just ran all over the Titans, who just ran all over the Houston defense? Derrick Henry. And by the way, the Houston defense was so bad that Jeremy McNichols, remember that dude from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? He managed a top 30 effort. So yes, A.J. Dillon is going to smash. We know that, by the way, Matt LaFleur, who drafted him and takes a little bit of credit for unlocking King Henry himself, has an affinity for the rookie running back. One quick stat, just because it's fun, per SIS, 78 broken tackles for A.J. Dillon in 2019. That is money. Also, another one, he went for 150 plus rushing yards in almost 42% of his career starts. Don't forget about A.J. Dillon while everyone else is scooping up Jamal Williams. All right, now let's talk about a player who maybe some of us wish was a little more forgettable. It's Jimmy Graham, Chicago Bears tight end. Obviously, Tank talked about Jimmy Graham earlier in the episode. Dude scores touchdowns. He has a total of 4 over his last 6 games. No, he didn't find the end zone last week. Cole Kmet did that. Thank you very much, rookie tight end out of Notre Dame. But he did have, what, 8 looks, which was a season high. He has 10 red zone looks. The tight end won for that statistical category on the season so far. Yes, he's definitely touchdown dependent, but guess what? He's scoring touchdowns, so you can depend on him. And the Rams have given up 4 tubs to opposing tight ends so far this season. So go ahead, if you're looking to stream, and add Jimmy Graham. Just like Planters peanuts are the crunchy snacks you crave on game day, we're here to get you the lineup you need to secure a Week 7 victory with just a few minutes left to kick off. Let's head back to our social channels for another check on viewer questions and make some crave-worthy picks presented by Planters. All right, this first tweet comes from EJ. It is a flex question, full PPR. Chase Claypool, Devin Singletary, or DeAndre Swift. I need a sip of water. Tank, you take it.
Oh, man, if I have to choose between those, I'm going with the guaranteed, man. Well, I hope it's guaranteed. I've been talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and how you don't know who to choose. There's going to be Juju, Claypool, Connor, and all those guys. But Claypool has been that guy for like the past 2-3 weeks. And so going up against the Tennessee Titans, who are really friendly against the pass, and Big Ben loves to throw deep. He hasn't done as well as he has when Antonio Brown was in the lineup. But Claypool is that guy for him. So I think it's going to be another big game for that guy. So Claypool it is.
All right, Minty, the second tweet comes to you, and it is from Andy. He says, hi, Minty, I know you're a Saints fan. Oh, it's so nice to be seen. I'm considering playing them, giving 7. Thoughts? Thanks.
Well, Andy, I am actually on the other side here. I have the Panthers plus 7.5. I think Teddy Bridgewater will do well against the Saints, his old team. I'm so sad. But I know the Saints are phenomenal off a bye, but they're missing Sanders, they're missing Thomas. I think it's going to be pretty close here. I wouldn't sleep on the Panthers.
All right, Andy, get ready because this question was directed specifically at you, and it comes from Craig. Brandon Cooks, DJ Chark, or Mike Williams in a half-point PPR league?
Oh, gosh, it pains me to pick against DJ Chark because I've just got him everywhere, and I could use a big week at some point, but I would be starting Brandon Cooks here. Matt said it earlier. I feel like you just want every piece of this Green Bay-Houston game. Cooks has been money for the last 2 weeks. There's no way I see that slowing down against Green Bay. Green Bay, obviously a contender because they have a great offense, but that defense has been nothing special. So I think Cooks can go off again. He would be my play.
All right, Matt, I'm going to give this next one to you because I can't wait to hear what you do with it. Andy Dalton, or, it's from Lady Chow, by the way, Andy Dalton, or just wait, Jimmy Garoppolo. By the way, can we just talk about what Chase Young is going to eat? So, oh my, Chase Young's going to like shower in Planters peanuts. He's going to eat so good after this game.
Well, I see the key detail you left off here is that this is a full PPR league, which
right.
really definitely is a huge factor that you got to include when you're talking about the quarterback position, especially considering Andy Dalton has a long history, or at least he did one time catch a touchdown. So I'm actually going to go with Andy Dalton because of the PPR, but no, I'm not really going to go with him because of the PPR bonus. But look, neither of these quarterbacks are good players. Jimmy Garoppolo last week had the highest expected completion percentage of the week at 77.5%, and he still managed to underperform that by almost 10 points. They're giving him layups, and he's still not that good. So yeah, I'm going to go with Andy Dalton in this one. I think it's the more fantasy-friendly environment just from a total points perspective. I think Washington's offense can get going. And I think Andy Dalton, look, Liz, you were totally right to call it last week. Andy Dalton debuting for America's team on primetime. What were we doing thinking that was going to be a big line? A little Sunday afternoon game buried between a lot of other good contests. That's the type of time where Andy Dalton shines.
Mercifully not on prime time. Remember, be sure to have Planter snacks on hand all season long and keep up with Peanut Jr. on social media at Mr. Peanut. We're inching ever closer to kickoff here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we'll get our final thoughts and check back in on the chat. Just a few minutes left here on Fantasy Football Live. Let's get some final thoughts from everyone. Andy, which situations or players are you monitoring in Week 7?
I'm probably most anxious about the Kansas City backfield. We're going to get our first look at Le'Veon Bell as a member of the Chiefs, and I got to know when he actually is going to come on the field. Is he going to rotate in with CEH, or are we going to see him in goal-to-go situations, which has the potential to take a ton of potential value away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire?
Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about the Packers-Texans as like everybody in the pool, let's go. But the original team before the Bucs did it, before the Texans did it, was the Atlanta Falcons. Like, you played everybody on their offense in daily fantasy, and you ran it back with whoever they were playing. I think they're kind of back to that situation with Julio Jones changing their offense. Like, no shock. He is, of course, a guy who's a transformative talent. I want to see if the Lions on the other side of the field, can they respond, especially their passing game, which has not been firing on all cylinders like we saw it when Matthew Stafford was a great deep passer last week.
Tank, who do you need to fire on all cylinders, or who are you hoping will?
Well, I need my cousin to ball out against the Houston Texans, so hopefully he gets that done for me. But then on top of that, like, I'm interested to see what happens with the New England Patriots and the San Francisco 49ers, two teams that are still trying to find their identity after being playoff teams last year. Let's see which team takes a step forward this week.
Minty, what about you?
I'm super interested to see this Seahawks-Cardinals game. Divisional games are always super close. I'm scared this is going to be super close already about the Seahawks, so fingers crossed.
I'm ready to see Josh Allen and Sam Darnold relive 2018, baby. No Jamison Crowder. Tre'Davious White is in. Sorry about it, Rashad Perryman. Oh my gosh, ghosts of the... Sam Darnold's going to be begging to see some ghosts in this one. All right, Matt, actually, any questions about the Jets in this one? Can you check the chat, please?
No, I don't think people are crazy enough to ask any Jets-based questions this week. But we do have one, and I'm gonna give. I don't normally like this emoji, but I'm gonna give Symes some respect here, because they've sent in the TikTok, like a clock emoji, the ringing bell emoji. I normally hate when people like, hey, say time's ticking here, time's ticking. You need to answer this question for me when they send it on a Wednesday or something. But I'm gonna answer your question: Tim Patrick or DJ Chark? Because time is literally clicking here, like it's about to be kickoff. I'm going with Tim Patrick. We talked about it a bunch on this show, but that guy's basically playing Cortland Sutton's old role, and he's, producing in it. So I'm going to go with Tim Patrick in this one, very confident.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thank you for kicking off your NFL Sunday with us. Remember, you can connect with us all week long on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. That's our podcast. Mad Bets daily on Yahoo Sports, and of course back here every Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all your fantasy teams in Week 7, and we will see you next week.